91 political parties, but not more than 40 of them were able to beat the October the 18th deadline set by the Independent National Electoral Commission for the submission of their names of presidential and National Assembly candidates.
Absolutely. Now, this means less than 40 persons will contest the 2019 presidential election. Of the parties that scaled through, the big two are, of course, the APC and the PDP. They submitted the names of their presidential candidates, who are Muhammadu Buhari, the current president, and Atiku Abubakar, former vice president.
Yes, indeed. And November the 2nd is the deadline for the submission of names of candidates contesting governorship and state houses of assembly elections. INEC is insisting that it will not extend its deadline and says it will publish the list of nominated candidates for the presidential and governorship elections on January 17, 2019. Our guest is still very much in the studio. Wale Fakbunda is a public affairs analyst. Thanks for remaining with us. Okay, so 50 out of, well, about 40 out of 91 political parties have been able to meet INEC's deadline. Does this really come as a surprise to you?
Not at all.
I wonder what questions this raises in your mind.
Not at all. You see, the point is this. In as much as it is your constitutional right to set up or to form political associations, to form political parties, if you, within the context of the Nigerian situation now, if you are really serious about contesting for public office, you must do that within the realm of the reality on ground.
Which are?
I mean, which is simple. A lot of these political parties do not even have the necessary wherewithal to contest election in today's Nigeria. So, I mean, I don't know what the motivation is, but the truth of the matter is this: you cannot, as a Christian, the Bible says you cannot build a house without counting the cost. So you should know what it's going to take you. It's not for you to fickle out at the middle of the way.
And talking about counting the costs, would you say that it could be that some of them are just trying to be smart and not to waste their money, and they could have the money, but might not just want to go the whole hog,
because they understand that this is a two-horse.
Exactly, the big candidates.
That's the point we're making. So if from the beginning you know that you lack the capacity to go the full hog, then you should be able to come up with a strategy. It's either to try to align with the existing political parties that you know would give you the opportunity and the platform if you really have something to offer, rather than setting up mushroom political parties. It is a constitutional right, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, if you merge it with the reality on ground, you find that sometimes it doesn't make sense.
Okay, so 2019 is right around the corner. The two major political parties and their candidates, the APC and the PDP, they've been saying this and this and this is what we have done in the past, and so this is the reason why you should, you know, go to the polls and vote us. What do you really think should determine or guide the 2019 presidential election especially?
Well, I think the two major political parties have had the opportunity of ruling this country. I mean, the APC in the last 3 years plus, and the PDP for about 16 years. So I think it is important for Nigeria to take stock. It's important for Nigeria to look at the years of PDP vis-a-vis the resources available for that party and the government at that point in time, and to also look at the APC vis-a-vis the resources available for them in terms of the economy, and then how far they have gone in trying to fulfill what they said they would do. Now, on a personal note, I've tried to take stock, I've tried to do some research on what the PDP said when they were coming into office, the kind of activities that happened when they were in the office. And then I've also tried to juxtapose that with the APC party, the APC led by Muhammadu Buhari, what they said they were going to do, the resources available to them, how far they have gone in trying to do all of these things. And then at the end of the day, sentiments apart, emotion apart, tribal issue apart, political affiliation apart, at the end of the day, I would want to say, you know what, I want to give the APC a second chance.
Okay, now,
I'm going to come up with that. Now, you know, when they were campaigning for election, they hang their campaigns on three cardinal issues: economy, security, and to fight against corruption. Now, if you look at the economy, for instance, the data is available everywhere. You see, despite the fact that they have dwindling oil revenue, despite the fact that
recession?
there was recession, massive unrest in oil-bearing states, and all of that. The government, within the limit of the resources at its disposal, has still tried to make a difference. And I'm going to give you the reasons. For example, they came in, they said, you know what, we want to diversify the economy, to even start with that. Now, you will see genuine intentions in terms of diversification in the area of agriculture. Okay. You find that, and then the numbers are there, you find that there are various agricultural initiatives that have been put in place by this government through the trading in cashew, crude palm kernel, frozen shrimps and prawns and all of those things. To the point that agriculture then accounted for about 222 billion naira, amounting to about 4.03% of the trading activities in Nigeria. Yeah. Then at the end of the day, it's contributed a nominal GDP of about 21.2%. And a projected growth of about 6.4 on year-on-year basis. So I would want to give that kind of government a second chance. And then let me see what is happening. Because before now, you can't see that these things was in place. It was just lip service. All we're doing was just to keep selling oil. And then at the end of the day, you cannot be a judge. But you still
have to bear in mind that the oil you talk about, we're beginning to earn a lot more from oil now.
Yes,
I mean, it's gotten close to 85.
But you cannot compare. Now, when this government came in, when this government came in, they met it at about $30 or $40 or thereabouts, and that's the average price. Okay. Now, compared to the previous government, they sold for an average of $100 to $110. There was no unrest in the Niger Delta, and now the real method of ascertaining whether you are doing the right thing or not is that you can't be a judge in your own case. So you actually need somewhat an independent umpire to actually say, okay, this government is doing well and this government is not doing well.
And it will be the voter that will decide that.
Yeah, apart from the voters.
Who can do an independent analysis of both parties?
Apart from the voters. For example, look at Forbes Africa. This is a research firm. They came up with a figure just last and rated Nigeria economy as the best in Africa, valued at about $172 billion, followed by South Africa, 166 billion, and then Egypt, I think about 68, and Algeria and Ghana.
Value.
Yes.
It has a large population.
But the point is this: there are certain parameters for coming up. I mean, for coming, to this conclusion. And these guys would have probably looked at your debt to GDP ratio, the kind of money you are earning, how effective you have managed your resources, and all of those things. So even this government has also told us that as part of the way to boost the economy, they want to invest heavily in agriculture and in infrastructure, and we are seeing it. I live in the southwest. I know what is going on in the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. You can see the first leg of the Lagos-Kano Rail, Lagos-Ibadan Rail. Activities are going on there. My wife comes from Asaba, Delta State. I've gone to Asaba. I took a stroll from Asaba to Onitsha, and I saw the second Niger Bridge. In
fact, the government is even completing some projects abandoned by the previous administration. But then,
it is only normal that you give that kind of government a second, compared to the level of mindless looting that the previous government was characterized with. I think it's a huge risk. That some of those characters that are talking today, that are shouting witch hunting, political prosecution, and all of those things are going to come back into government.
All right, Wale, we've talked about the economy. Let's look at the anti-corruption drive of the administration. How has the APC performed that you would say that, yes, it deserves another chance?
Well, I think more than ever before in this country, we've seen serious, aggressive drive towards anti-corruption. The truth of the matter is this: the EFCC, as an agency of government, was not set up by this administration.
True.
The EFCC Establishment Act, was not passed by this administration. But this act was passed by the ambassador's government. And for close to 10, 12, 14 years, 10 years, we didn't really see the aggressiveness in the way they are fighting.
Well, the PDP is saying if they get the chance in 2019, there will be that aggressive war.
So what were they doing
against corruption?
So what were they doing when crude oil amounting to the value of about $12.7 billion was stolen? What were they doing? What were they doing when monies that were meant, that were earmarked to fight insurgency were being diverted?
Some people
were collecting money in hotels. What were they doing? So you are telling me, okay, sorry, I stole your money, but please forgive me, allow me into your house again.
To make amends.
To make amends.
Yeah,
have you gone through deliverance? Who delivered you?
I'm a changed person now. That's what they're saying.
Because you are a changed person. I'm sorry,
process.
I understand, but that is if I am limited, if the choice is limited to you. But if I see someone else that has performed better than you in his words, in his action, that have taken steps to fight corruption genuinely, although it's not perfect.
Okay. Then I was about to say that APC has been accused of being selective in, I
actually don't agree on that, the tag of being selective in the fight against corruption. But I do know that as humans, nobody's perfect. So sometimes some considerations, I don't know.
Okay, let me take you on the economy issue that you talk about, that the Forbes has come out to say that Nigeria has the best economy in Africa, followed by South Africa. Economic Intelligence came out with a damning report about the state of Nigeria's economy. And this same government, waved it off. Saying it's not every report from these international agencies that Nigerians should, pay any mind to. So now, Forbes has come out to say, you're doing well. And here we are saying, yes, it's a good one. It's a good endorsement of our performance as far as the economy is concerned. Isn't that a bit...
You see, sometimes some of these issues are questions of perception and the data available for your analysis.
Perception on whose part now?
Well, sometimes on the part of the
international
organizations and all of that. Okay. But the point I'm making is this. If you say I'm doing badly, I want you to be able to tell me that this and this and this I've considered to say you are doing badly. Now, the reason I believe the Forbes rating is because they gave us practical data, practical analysis, and figures of why they said Nigeria is doing better. For example, they came up with a figure.
Would such magazines be in the best position to say Nigeria is actually doing better? Or would you prefer a preponderance of the population saying we actually feel better, that I'm able to pay my children's school fees? It's a lot easier now. Transportation is a lot easier.
Put to the mix. They report that Nigerians are getting poorer. Nigeria is the poverty capital of the world.
Yeah, how do you
I totally understand you. The truth of the matter is the best judge, just like we're going to agree, the best judge is the people. Okay? Now, but also, the people need to also take into consideration where they are coming from.
Okay.
The people, it is practically impossible for us to solve some of these problems within 4 years. Especially, I'm sure this government too was shocked when they came into power. They made a lot of promises, but when they came into power and they saw the level of corruption, they shouted, the president shouted at some point that, look, there's corruption everywhere.
Well, that's understandable. But
yeah, so the point I'm making is this. So I'm coming. The point I'm making then is this. So for the common man that can see that there is progress in these areas, okay, then I can then say, I can be patient for it to have meaningful impact in my life. I'm going to give you an example.
4 years.
I'm going to give you an example. And then at the end of the day, you see, we all know that house rent in Lagos State is, because it is market driven, so it's quite, it's a bit on the high side. Okay, now they are fixing Lagos about the expressway. If I can live in Ogun State, if I can live in Imowe or Ibafo, and then I can get to Lagos in 20, 30 minutes because the road is very good, then I'll be better off. And so at that point, I can then appreciate that this government has actually solved one of my problems. But you can then see that the road is being fixed. And so imagine a train running from Ibadan to Lagos on a daily basis. Then it then tells you that people can live in Ibadan and work in Lagos on a daily basis.
In essence, what you're saying is that, okay, for example, case in point, the cardinal manifesto points the APC administration rode on to get to power, fixing the economy, fighting corruption, and of course ensuring that security is, established across the country, good security. And then maybe as we are seeing it, the government the administration got into power and discovered so many rots already in place and has not been able to achieve everything. What you're saying in essence is that give them another chance, though they've not been able to achieve all the promises made to you. After all, PDP was there for 16 years, right?
No,
is that what you're saying?
What they are saying is this. Be a little patient with us. The promises that we made, we have taken steps to fulfill those promises. Now, you are going to begin to see the impact of those promises if you give us another 4 years. And I've pointed, instances where work activities have commenced on those promises that they talked about.
Security.
I talked about the agricultural sector of the Nigerian economy. This was unprecedented. This is totally unprecedented.
We're still exporting raw materials, raw food, and not
finished
not
products.
finished.
But we're not going to. At the end of the, we're not going to achieve this within 4 years.
In a short time.
Okay, so that's why I asked if
this is not just about the APC now.
Yes.
We're
it's not about the APC.
We're talking about.
I just told you.
Oh, absolutely. We understand that. But let me put this in. There's been this debate about, whether a person of integrity or competence should be the one that Nigerians should be voting for in 2019. I wonder which should carry the day: integrity or competence, or a combination of both.
I don't think one, it's a combination of both. But again, I actually don't think we should have that conversation of if someone is competent or if he's said to be competent.
Really?
And then if he lacks integrity, I don't think we should have that conversation at all.
Okay, and if someone has integrity and is perceived not to be competent?
If someone has integrity and is perception is perceived not to be competent, I would rather still go for that person that has integrity, because at the end of the day, you will find out that the president needs to do.
Oh, you're talking about the president now.
Yeah, I thought that was a question.
No,
I asked the question.
Okay, generally. So all the head needs
qualities.
to do is to just assemble competent people around him. And then because the head has integrity, because it is zero tolerance for corruption, it will definitely rub off on even those competent people that are working for him and do not necessarily have integrity. But if you are saying you are competent, you are being touted to be competent, and you are a thief, then there is absolutely no way you are going to be able to manage effectively the resources of that country.
And we are seeing
because if you have a pilferer as a leader of a country, then it's only normal that those people working around him will just want to say,
so in essence, are we seeing that in this administration, because President Muhammadu Buhari is a candidate now, going into the election in 2019, is seen as a man with high integrity, not just integrity now, high integrity, a man that is believable, that is sellable to many people. So have you seen that in his administration so far?
I don't think, to be very honest, and this is not partisan, I don't think that is debatable, that President Muhammadu Buhari, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, I don't think we can have that conversation.
We're asking a question because we are analyzing this. Have you seen that?
Mention a particular scandal that involves these two people that we talked about.
Well,
under the previous administration, the previous administration and the administration of Obasanjo Atiku, the then vice president were being fingered in a lot of corrupt activities. You cannot mention that about Professor Yemi Osinbajo.
They were being fingered, but has any court of law really ruled that, yes,
no
this
court
person
of law.
was corrupt,
okay, I understand you, but these people that we just mentioned, President Muhammadu Buhari, Professor Yemi, have not even been fingered for anything at all.
But what about people under them?
The people under them, of course, you see, the truth of the matter is this.
I'm taking you back to what you said earlier.
The truth of the matter is this. If you have 12 disciples, you're going to have a Judas.
But when it's more than one Judas, what happens then?
No, that's
because it paints a different picture of, this whole the war against corruption, for example. Since that's what we're talking about.
You are actually going to be having certain corrupt elements that we want to mix into the crowd. So what you need to do is to try, once you identify them, you weed them out. But more importantly, it is the head that is
very important.
And the current president, politics apart, sentiments apart, emotions apart, the current president, the current vice president, you can't have that conversation. I saw something online one time that you cannot even go to the president and begin to have certain conversation about corrupt activities. Look at what usually go on under the previous administration. When you go and get government contract, all you need to do is this. The first lady knows about this, or the president knows about this, and it is done. Now, you can't even mention their names.
No influence peddling.
There is no influence, and that's part of the problem that the APC government has been having in this administration, because those that are used to free money, that supported the coming into power of the APC, and then they saw that the president is not giving them those things that they thought they were going to get.
Yeah, but the critics of this administration...
It brings to mind the statement of the president when he was sworn in about 3.5 years ago, that he belongs to everybody and belongs to nobody. Fale Fakunda, public affairs analyst, thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go on a short break, and when we return, of course... Yes,
well we're still on the show this morning. we talked about the renewed violence in Kaduna State, and really, truly, that's nothing to smile or even laugh about. 24-hour curfew is in place in Kaduna State.
And also, the race to Aso Rock is getting swifter in the National Assembly as candidates have emerged.
And excessive and illegal charges that have become a part of the banking system.
We have more for you. Stay with us. We'll be right back. You guys...
Take it to the issues of money now, especially on a Monday. I mean, what better time to talk about money issues? The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has once again issued a warning to Nigeria to check rising levels of debt, diversify her revenue bases, or else face crisis.
In fact, that warning is not just for Nigeria alone, for some other African countries as well. And the IMF issued this latest warning at the just concluded IMF World Bank annual meeting in Bali, Indonesia. The fund had earlier warned Nigeria to over its rising debt profile, which was 22.3 trillion naira as of June the 30th this year, that she soft pedal on borrowing.
Yes, indeed. And the National Bureau of Statistics had earlier disclosed that Nigeria spends about 2/3 of its revenue on debt servicing. Now, that is interest payments, while the principal still awaits offsetting. The Nigerian Senate has also cautioned the federal government on borrowing while attending to President Buhari's loan request.
But the Red Chamber want the executive not to return Nigeria to a debt trap after approving the president's request for $2.78 billion Eurobond. Joining us to discuss this is a chartered accountant, Sheson Okwade. Good morning to you, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
After just exiting the Paris Club creditors just a few years ago, Nigeria again is facing
where we started from.
Absolutely, is facing the debt trap.
Considering this fact of what this administration came on board when they came in, that they intend to put in place some infrastructure to make the economy to bounce back. You know, we're in recession when they came in. we expected this to actually happen, because for you to make some things happen and you don't have good revenue, the next thing to do is to go borrowing. And you know, for any surviving economy, borrowing is really not a problem, but how you are able to repay back your money and spending judiciously. So I think the current problem we are having, considering all the monetary and fiscal policy in place, is that the borrowing is actually not a problem, but how of monitoring are we able to do to make sure that what those funds are actually borrowed for are able to trickle back to make sure there is enough room to have a repayment plan. Revenue. You understand?
Yes.
That is where we are having a particular problem now. What the IMF have actually stated, that we should caution the level at which we borrow, it's inevitable, because so many of these funds that are being borrowed and plowed into the economy are not actually monitored to yield the expected result. Let's take, for example, so much money was plowed into the energy sector, and as we speak, we are being told by the Minister of Power that we now generate over 7,000 megawatts. How many of such are we utilizing? You discover that the money borrowed was actually invested, but was not monitored to give commensurable returns. Because if so much of those energy are being consumed by the people, definitely it will have impact on the economy.
And now he's even saying that power cannot even be, power problem cannot be solved by magic.
So you discover that so much of investment that has been plowed in that sector is already a waste, and there is no how you can service those loans. So you only be battling with paying of interest as against having enough revenue. And as we speak, so many diversification that we are talking about, but none of them are yielding the dividend that we expect from it. So you discover that the more they borrow, the more problem we are entrenched to, because we lack an area, competency in monitoring that what is being plowed to develop. Take, for example, you take a loan from a bank to do a particular project, and the project is not yielding, you have actually sustained it, but it's not yielding the revenue to pay back, then you have a problem. Or you just be servicing, might just be paying the interest and not the principal.
So in other words, Nigeria really has not learned from the lessons of the past. What led us to the Paris Club debt forgiveness in the first place. We're back
to me,
where
we've not learned. You see,
like
every now and then when we try as much as possible to create to people is having values. It's the value. It's very much important. We can come here and talk about the micro, the macro, all those things between you and I on paper has failed. But what we lack currently is value to monitor some of these activities. Some of those indices that we have in place can work any other place, but here in Nigeria it's difficult to maintain.
Not because it is impossible, but because, just like you said, we don't, one of our strong points just doesn't seem to be monitoring where those funds go. Of course, experts have said there's a need to block or plug those revenue leakages and really, truly diversify the economy. Because, well, I mean, our earlier guests, you know, talking about the gains made in agriculture, for example, he talked about how Nigeria is now exporting, you know, food stuff and all of that.
Yeah, I listen to that.
They're not finished.
But the fact that is just raw foods that have been done. For you to process some of those things, I'm sure you know you need some machinery to be put in place. You need some heavy-duty machines to do. If you want to process the yam that is being sent out, some of this, the administration has actually tried, at least in recent time, we can say we are exporting some of those things. But some of those things cannot actually give the right value to what we actually want compared to some of the processed food. Because at least some of those, but you need serious investment to make those raw food to go back to what will give you a high yield revenue. So this is an area where we are lacking. You see, when we borrow, we have said it, we come on the air as chartered accountant, as economists, to put some of those indices in place, the micro, the macro, and some of those things. But as we speak, what we lack is monitoring. Now,
well, you said it earlier as well. Anyway, but the Finance Minister, Zainab Ahmed, has said that Nigeria doesn't have debt problem at all. But what the problem Nigeria has is revenue problem. That, after all, the debt to GDP ratio of the country is still within the 3% threshold set by the Fiscal Responsibility Act. that there is no cause for worry. It's just money to, carry out expenditures, capital expenditures, that is not available.
What the minister, pardon me on that, is saying is based on external loan, not the domestic one. The domestic debt that some of this administration owes is really enormous. The one she's actually talking of 2-3% that they are managing has to do with our external debt. Internally, so many of those banks are actually crying because so much loan are borrowed from the domestic loan that are difficult to pay back. But most of the time we talk vis-a-vis the external loan. You can manage your external whatever, but your internal
moved towards getting more foreign loans than local loans.
Because why are we not sourcing locally? Because we have actually borrowed beyond the threshold that is expected. So you have to look for alternative means. And that's why you're feeling that the 2-3% expected of our debt vis-a-vis the GDP is still within. But if you have an internal muscle to borrow, why do you go external? Because definitely it's cheaper for you to get your funds. As you are borrowing, you are applying back to make those economies to grow. Why do we need to look outside? But because nobody is talking so much of the domestic loan, nobody is talking of the internal crisis that we are having, we are only looking outside. And if we have to go the path of what she's saying, that means we have more crisis to be looming. That means we go outside the threshold of the 2-3% of which is saying that we are having comfort. Why do we need to borrow money?
So how does Nigeria get out of this vicious cycle? Yes, government says its strategy of 60, is a 60-40 debt ratio. Yeah. That it's working. I wonder if you believe that. Do you agree with that? And of course, the $3 billion raised through the Euro bond and all of that, that's being used to service
the current
debt that we have now. How sustainable is that even?
Like I said, the key thing that will lack with this current thing is proper monitoring. If you are borrowing a particular fund, it's meant for a particular project. Like this current money being approved by the Senate for the president, there are specific things that they have actually committed those things for.
Yes.
On the long run, what is the return? I'm sure no Senate, no red chamber will go ahead to approve loan when you don't have a profile of how those loans will be repaid back.
Okay, Sheson, you've been talking about Nigeria lacking proper monitoring system. But then who monitors? Because the government is in charge of the funds. It's the government that disperses the funds for infrastructure projects. And the government is in charge. So how do you monitor yourself to make yourself accountable?
You see, the Senate has a role too to play. When you approve a certain thing, you are the watchdog on the executive. The executive are to execute some of those plans. But I give you approval to go and do something. It's like, we can't come here and say, you are superior, I'm superior. But for you to have any disbursement, I need to approve. If I've approved something, then I should be able to guide and ask questions how some of those things are done.
Would you say that is even happening on the part of the National Assembly?
It's not.
Beyond telling the executive, hey, you need to slow down. On
what are the laws that are put in place to checkmate the activities? Because that's why you are lawmakers. You have seen that, okay, I'm disbursing this out to you as the executive to go and execute some of this thing, but these are some of the checks we are going to put to make sure that we don't go into. If the country goes down today, it's not about the executive alone. Definitely the lawmakers to have failed. So what we are saying is that let there be laws. The EFCC, the ICPC, the agency that needs to, the Accountant General, Auditor General, all those people, some of them are working with the executive, but have the independency to check activities that are going on. So we expect them to put some checks in place to make sure that some of the funds being borrowed actually do. See, we're going
especially those the debts accrued by the states, for example, all 36 states, about 3 trillion or so, and Lagos, of course, has the largest chunk of that. Should there be some kind of ceiling on what the states can borrow?
That is why I said the law must be in place. If there is a control mechanism on that, a state won't go as length as borrowing what it can repay back. part of the problem is we can cry that the federal government, but the problem some of those states too are creating in the name of creating infrastructure. Some of those infrastructure, how do we monitor that some of them are actually executed? Some of them are projects that cannot, they are white elephant projects that cannot yield dividend in the next 20 years.
Like airports and...
if you develop an airport today, how many of us traveled? Is those why not go borrow money, invest in what the masses can definitely, the artisans can have contribution about, fix the road. We are talking about making agriculture a very viable product. You get the produce from the farm, it's difficult for you. If you get some things from Ogun State here to Lagos to bring down, you know the chunk. On this Lagos-Ibadan expressway, the traffic we face. A few days ago, I traveled and it cost me so much hours to move all the way just from Ibadan to Lagos.
So the lack of creativity on the part of state governments in generating IGR is contributing to this?
That is why so many of them will tell you that they cannot pay the new NLC bond that they want to make. Because there's no creativity. Everybody is waiting from the central to make those things happen. Create money. If you have creativity to increase your IGR, then your borrowing will go down. Then you should be able to empower the people that contribute to the bottom line, not empowering just the little few. So many of the little few that we have, if you go by even tax drive, so many of them they avoid tax. It is, of course, you know the multiple tax the guys in the market.
Yes, the former minister
they pay.
Said so.
You discover that the people that even contribute to the bottom line are the masses. And they are not being empowered.
Is there any link between Nigeria's debt profile now and our forex reserve that seems to be dwindling, in spite of the fact that we seem to be making more money from the global oil
price, which increased both in capacity and the price.
The CBN has tried to explain it away and said that there is no link between the dwindling forex reserve and the election year that is right around the corner. And I wonder if that is the absolute truth. We should take it with a pinch of salt.
The CBN governor will act in accordance to some of the things to make sure that we don't have. We are in the election period. And we should expect that. More money will definitely be trickled out to canvass and win the heart of the people. Somebody that has not been working in the last 3 years, 3.5 years, at this point in time, feel he needs more money to do some infrastructure so that he can win the heart of the people for second time. So the debt profile we're talking about, come to think about it, the man has just put a position in place to defend his own work and defend the whole country. But we expect more borrowing because you see in the next few weeks, campaigns start ravaging. People start asking questions. So you discover that they need money, not only to share to people, but to do some basic and many things, to see them say, you know, we are working.
But that's speculative anyway. But then add to the mix the statements credited to the CBN governor as well that the country could still, you know, start back into recession.
You see, if we continue with this that we are doing, it's inevitable. Recession looms for us. Because when you are coming out of a place and you are being funded by people to say, okay, let's you know, revive your activities, and there are no proper checks and monitoring, there is no how you won't go back to where you started from. So areas where we looked at is how do we invest in the little people that gives back to the country, gives back into the economy.
That make up the larger population anyway.
They make the larger population. If you look at what several of these market women pay as taxes, as fine, from the little thing that they do, all these SMEs, what they give back, you can't compare to what the big multinationals claim to be contributing back to the economy.
True, and it seems
they are
that
the ones that actually default the most.
They default most, and these are areas we need to put those checks in, so that some of those investments we are doing, they enjoy it more than the small masses.
But how do you do something the same way and expect different results? Because if you look at the annual budget of the country, recurrent expenditure is always higher than capital expenditure. So how do you now say that you have enough to even, you know, carry out developmental projects that could yield revenue for the nation?
Until we have, like we always say, the right set of people bringing out policy to work in favor of the country.
Competent people?
competence, the right set of people who have understanding and the stake of the country at heart to get some things right. You cannot be servicing people coming to work without doing anything. Like we keep saying, the public service must be overall. This administration are trying their best, but even at the state level, at the federal level, if you look at the intensity at which the private sector work in court, you can compare it at the level at which the public service works.
Before we go very quickly, very briefly, is it sound economic judgment to borrow a way out of recession?
No, it sounds economically. Because you need to get some funds, bail yourself out. But what is very much important is that which you are borrowing to salvage the situation, you must have the competence, you must have had some things, some plans in place of what you are investing in to get some returns and get you out of it.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us, Chesson.
You want to rechristen him?
Chesson.
Thank you very much.
Of course, he's a chartered accountant. Let's hope the next time we meet, Nigeria's debt would have nosedive.
We'll believe that too. We'll believe that.
All right, thank you so much.